Well, up until the Apple Lisa, all we had were command lines on a monochrome screen. You know, that's what you had, whether it was an Apple, whether it was an IBM. It was all command lines with all these arcane words and commands to make anything happen. And you know, if you're doing a document, word processing, you had no way to easily highlight or italicize or change fonts. You had to use all these suffixes and prefixes. And here comes the Lisa with the bitmap screen, the little icons. What you see is what you get. It's just a miracle. Well, I bought a 2E back in 1983, or was it 84, about that time. And so I went into the computer store to get some software, and I looked over on the side, and there was this huge Apple computer sitting there. It was a Lisa 1. And I went over and looked at it, and I asked the guy, I said, "What is this?" He said, "Oh, that's the Lisa." He said, "You can play with it." I said, "How?" He said, "Use the mouse." I said, "What's that?" And so then I used the mouse, and I clicked, and the whole thing shut down. So I thought I had ruined it until I left.
What store was that?
It was called Computer Haven, here where we live, and they were an Apple dealer. They're strictly Apple. Well, I was incredibly impressed. You know, I came back a couple of days later, and we talked about it, and I said, "Well, what's one of these cost?" He says, "Oh, like $9,000. And well, okay, you know, I couldn't give up a year's salary. So I stayed with my Apple IIe. And then Sun Remarketing came along. Thank God for Sun Remarketing. And I was able to get a Lisa system with a profile, 5 megabyte profile, for only $1,099 or something like that.
What year was that?
That was 1986, I think. Quickly after the Lisa 1 came out, then it was gone, it seemed like. It didn't last long. Then the Lisa 2.5 came out, almost at the same time as the Mac 128K. So the Mac 128K was much more expensive than a Lisa, and you had more RAM, and you had a hard drive, and it was a much better deal, I thought. So I wasn't tempted to get a Mac 128K or 512K at first, because we just had the Lisa as our home system, as our home computer, and I did things for work. The kids did their homework, and my wife used it for, I don't know what she used it for, but she used it. And so it was our home computer for a long time. I replaced it finally with well, let me think. I didn't replace it till it was in the early 90s. I still used the Lisa, did everything I needed. I guess I replaced it with a Mac Color Classic 2. Mac Color Classic, not the 2. The 2 was from Japan. A Color Classic I replaced it with.
Okay, because you wanted to move the color.
Right, I like the color, and I like still a compact system. And with the Color Classic, I could do all I needed to do as far as make images of Lisa software and deserialize the Lisa disk. So it had the power and ability to do that.
Now, on your Lisa, did you run the Lisa Office system, or did you run MacWorks?
Oh, I ran both. I mean, the Lisa Office system was such a neat thing. You had all the integrated tools that you could cut and paste and go back and forth. And I like to play with that, and I use it some at work for work projects. And then I would switch over to MacWorks, and I could play all the Mac games of that epoch, you know, all the Mac Plus things. So I used it both ways for a long, long time.
The other thing I figured out about my Lisa is I had very little problem with compatibility unless I tried to play a Mac game that addressed the sound chip directly.
Yes.
Did you have that? I'm sure you.
Yeah, that didn't go so well.
It would crash it?
That didn't go so well. But you know, eventually there was a sound card for the Lisa.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, I think I kind of remember that.
As I recall talking to people, I don't think that Steve Jobs was the one who said, let's call it the Mac XL. I think that was a marketing strategy. The 2.5 had been discontinued. It was gone. The 210, it had the internal 10 megabyte hard drive, which they called the Widget, of course, which sometimes it ran and sometimes it didn't run, and it would do crazy things. It wasn't very dependable. And then when they repackaged it as the Macintosh XL, all they did was stickers were sent to the dealers, and they would put a sticker on a Lisa case, the Lisa 210, and it says Macintosh XL. In fact, I got a couple of them sticking up over there. See, it says Macintosh XL.
Yeah.
And I don't think that lasted more than a few months, and then it was gone. And then Sun Remarketing stepped in. They got into trouble with the Lisa because of the $10,000 initial price. I think that sort of killed popular interest. It was the military, the government, banks, businesses, and universities that bought the Lisas. A normal person would not come out with $10,000 to get one. So I think that although there was a rise in its popularity when it was offered for $1,000, it was really too late for it. And all the enhancements that had been envisioned for it were canceled. Upgraded processors, upgraded screen, upgraded memory, upgraded capability. Mm-hmm. That was all dropped. And so it didn't, except for independent engineering companies that, like James MacPhail up in Canada with Sigma 7 systems, there was the accelerator, and then MacWorks Plus 2. Those came out, and they sort of kept the Lisa up to date, but it wasn't any effort from Apple to do that. Well, I was always really interested in the Lisa, and then back in the early days of the internet, when there were bulletin boards and classified ads, I saw some people advertising Lisas for sale as groups, like they didn't want them anymore, or a school. And so I would contact them. You call them on the phone in those days, and I would set up, say, well, if I drive down and get them, what can I have them for? So they would say, well, if you can have 10, I've got 10, you can have them for $500. And I'd say, okay, I'll drive down. So I would drive here or there to get it. And I saw an opportunity. I thought that I could refurbish them, and with the capability of the Lisa, I could maybe make some money reselling them, because I like the Lisa, I like to work on them, I could repair them. And so I ended up, I guess the first time there was a guy in Florida, and I bought 15 Lisas with spare parts.
And this is all before Sun Remarketing.
That was after Sun Remarketing.
Oh,
so
it is.
I was a minute competitor. Okay. All right. And so I got Lisas through buyouts from schools and from other collectors. And then I guess I had maybe, I don't know, 30 or 40 Lisas during that time, and I was refurbishing them and selling them. And then the opportunity came to get some stock from the old Lisa plant in Carrollton, Texas. A guy down there in Dallas had bought a bunch of that stock and had it in storage. And so I made a deal with him and went down and got a big rental truck load of them. I must have brought back 60 or 70, including 5 Lisa 1 systems. And then all kind of spare parts. So then I really started working on that, and I was fixing power supplies, and I was selling quite a bit of them. And then I guess the last big deal was I contacted Sun Remarketing when they were starting to get out of the business, and I asked them if they would consider selling what all they had left as one lot. And so they agreed, and so we came to a price, and then they shipped them. I had them ship them on a tractor trailer, several pallets of them, and so I still have like about 30 Lisas left. I guess at my height I must have had 150 or at least that many. I had so many of them, I had 2 storage units rented where I had Lisas, nothing in them but Lisas and Lisa parts. I was initially selling them as computers that could be used in a business, and so on. But no, none of my customers seemed interested in that. They wanted it because they liked the idea of it and the fact that they thought they could never own one, and I would refurbish them. You know, I would remove the dreaded screen mod if they didn't want that, or I could put the screen mod in. You know, if you have the screen mod installed, you can't run the Lisa Office system anymore. The Lisa, the aspect ratio of the pixels on the screen were different than the later Macintosh. On the Lisa, they were rectangular, and on the to simplify it, and on the Mac, they were square. So if you tried to run MacWorks on a Lisa without screen mod, it would run fine, except the images were slightly elongated in the vertical axis. But if you put the screen mod in, then Macintosh software looks just like it would on a Mac Plus, but you could no longer run the Lisa Office System software. It won't work. The initial ROM in the Lisas was for 400K, the 400K Sony drive. Sun Remarketing invented the 800K ROM that would allow you to run certain, but not all, 800K drives. And for that, they found one called, I guess, what was it called? The Copal, C-O-P-A-L. And it was hard to find. They had a bunch of them, but after that was gone, not many of the Apple 800K drives would work. But we found that you can modify an Apple SuperDrive, 3.5-inch drive, and it would work as an 800K drive in a Lisa. Huh. So my customers, even from the very beginning, were not interested in having a Lisa as a work computer. They wanted it as a collectible. They wanted to be able to do as much as they could with it. They just liked the idea of having this seminal machine that was really the first a computer for the public that had the user interface and integrated software. You know, I had nothing to do with it. I don't know, really. I know that.
Well, you know, from the after the fact. I mean, I know you weren't at Apple, but it's okay if you want to go.
Well, they didn't, of course, for the Mac 128K, they didn't have to reinvent the system of icons and the menu bar and all that. It was part of the Apple system, part of the Apple Lisa system. So of course the Mac was a derivative of the Lisa. There's no way to get around it. It was absolutely a derivative of the Lisa. But they made it to be incompatible with each other, of course. They didn't really market it very much. They just said, well, now the Apple Lisa is now the Mac XL. You have this bigger screen and so on, and then it was gone. They hardly marketed it at all. I was there in those days. I mean, I was paying attention, and there it was in one issue of one of the computer magazines, and a couple months later, why, it's gone. Well, in the mid to late 90s, I had enough Lisas that I wanted to try to experiment with upgrading to an accelerator or a MacWorks Plus 2. And there was an old Dayfax, remember the Dayfax company? They would advertise those. And I learned that it was James MacPhail of Sigma 7 Systems up in British Columbia, Canada, who had done the work on those. And so
he was the engineer and Dayfax was the marketer. Is that right?
I'm not sure what Sam Newlinger or whatever his name was.
That's the other name.
Yeah, I don't know his background exactly, but James was definitely the genius behind all that engineering. So I contacted James and I told him, I said, I'm trying to get this accelerator to work and so on, and he was concerned that I was just trying to get him to help me make money. And I said, oh, no. I said, I'm trying to get it to work for a friend, and I'm mystified. And so he said, well, okay. So he started helping me with that. And then I asked him about MacWorks Plus 2, which takes a daughter board, in fact, to run that. And it gives it really enhanced capabilities of, you can run System 7 and so on the Lisa. And then we started talking about how we needed a dependable mass storage device for the Lisa. All you had was the profile and a widget, and they were bombing out and wearing out, and sometimes you'd start them up and it sounded like a B-17 revving up, and it was they were just horrible devices. And so we both came up with the idea together of having a solid state device. And so James designed that on his own, the X Profile. He designed it and came up with some prototypes, which I tested here. And then we realized that if you wanted to install it in the old Profile case, that the Profile power supply was so unstable and erratic that the voltages varied all over the place, that you'd have to have a voltage regulator in order to install it in the Profile case. So he invented a voltage regulator board that you put in between the X Profile and the power supply. So you can use then an external X Profile with your Apple III.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that was his. So he was MacWorks Plus 2, the accelerator. And then, I don't know if this is the time to talk about it or not, but beginning about 5 or 6 years ago, Todd Meyer of Sapient Technologies, I was talking to him, and he came up with the idea of reinventing all the boards for the Lisa, because they're all corroded and rotting away. So then, James MacPhail, Todd Meyer of Sapient Technologies, and Rick Ragnini, he has a website called lisa2.com, and he is an engineer also. And we all got together and decided that we would start this project to recreate and essentially preserve the hardware by recreating the Lisa 2.5 motherboard, the Lisa 2.5 I/O board, the Lisa CPU board, the Lisa 210 I/O board, the Lisa 210 motherboard, and the parallel card, and the Lisa quad port serial board. And so we have done that. And in fact, we're on the last prototype now. The Lisa 210 I/O board is almost finished.
Please answer this question, because it baffles a lot of people, and you'll be like, oh yeah, so many years you've been answering this question. Please explain the difference. So you have the Lisa 1.
Right.
Then you have the Lisa 2.
Right.
And the Lisa 2 came in a certain number of configurations. Then you have the Macintosh XL. Please explain the difference. Yeah.
The Lisa 1 had the Twiggy drives. And so what makes the Lisa 1 are the Twiggy drives and the Lisa 1 faceplate. Okay? If you take off the Lisa 1 faceplate, remove the Twiggy drives, change 3 EEPROMs, and clip 1 resistor, it's a Lisa 2.5. Every Lisa 2.5 started life as a Lisa 1. Okay.
And it was called a 2.5 because
you had a 5. It wasn't the Lisa 1 anymore. It was the Lisa 2, and it had a 3.5-inch Sony floppy drive, and that's why you had that big empty drive cage in the front, and that little light card, which was the interface that allowed the system to run a 3.5-inch floppy drive. And the 5 was because it came with a 5 megabyte hard drive external to it called the Profile.
And now the Lisa 210.
The 210 was still a Lisa 2, meaning it wasn't a Lisa 1, and it had an internal 10 megabyte hard drive, okay, and it didn't have the stupid battery pack on the I/O board, all right, and that was it. It had an internal parallel port where the widget was connected, and it didn't have an external parallel port.
And the motherboard was different, right?
The motherboard was different in that it only had the Macintosh XL, and this is 210 is the same thing. Okay, it had an internal parallel port and just 2 external serial ports. The Lisa 1, the Lisa 2.5 used the same motherboard, and they had an external parallel port and 2 external serial ports.
So just drive it home. There is no difference between a Lisa 210 and a Macintosh XL other than the renaming.
Oh, it's the same thing. Oh, look, no, here. One day you have a case sitting there and it says, it's a Lisa 210. There's a letter comes from corporate says, starting on this date, the Lisa 210 becomes the Macintosh XL. So they get a roll of stickers. They go, Macintosh XL.
Good. That was great. Because that's important.
When they started, Apple started touting the the Lisa 210 as the Macintosh XL, they issued and sold to dealers a screen mod kit to allow you to install that. The dealers, they didn't want a user to install it because you could electrocute yourself. The dealer would install that, which would change the aspect ratio of the screen to match the square Macintosh pixels. And that, at the same time, made it impossible for the users to ever run the Lisa Office system again. And so they didn't have to support anything like that.